Welcome in, everybody. I am Ben Parker, joined by Shane Ratliff. Shane, I am so excited. We finally get to do some offensive linemen. You love it. I love it. We're going to hit several tonight. Thank you all for joining us. This is the Offensive Lineman Watch List for Pro Football Enterprises. We'll go in depth on about 7 guys tonight, is kind of our plan. And here in a couple of weeks, we'll go in depth on another handful of guys. But I'm going to give shout outs to about 24 guys. We'll literally just run through the back half of the list just to let people know what our watch list is starting to look like as we get into the summer. Shane, real quick, man, how's your summer going and how are you doing tonight, man?
Going real well for both right now, Ben. Like you said, happy to get started in kind of the breakdown for the offensive line. Each year we kind of build up what we think might hit the draft boards, and so far the last couple of seasons we've been pretty dead on and who ends up in your top 10. So
Yes, absolutely. We try to cover a wide enough net to get most of the important names. And again, somebody always moves up. If you're watching this for the first time, we've got a bunch of these already out. Okay. So we did a tight end watch list. We did a quarterback watch list, a wide receiver watch list, a running back watch list. So we have gone way deep into watch list prospects for the 27 draft coming up. And if you're just wanting to get ready for the 26 college football season, this is a great way to do it. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Trevor Gooseby from Texas, left tackle, height 6'7", weight 320. I've seen some different weight accounts. It's not hugely important until we hit the combine, but I did see some various weight mentions there. So Shane, go ahead and get us started on Trevor Gooseby.
so just to kind of hit on that weight element that you talked about, Ben, I've seen some fluctuating ones. I think it plays in two ways. I mean, Trevor Goose, it's athletic is what he's known for. Um, he's not even at 320 pounds. If that's what you're saying, he's at. When you see him out there, he still looks lean, athletic. Um, the best thing for him is that they basically put him in, and he reached All American status the second he starts playing. So uh, you give full credit for what he's done. I think he's in a very tough position because he gets watched an awful lot, being the guy that's questioned to protect Arch Manning. Um, and some of the stuff that pops up on his tape when you do see weaknesses, he gave up 16 pressures, 3 sacks last year on the high end for somebody that you're thinking of as a perennial tackle selection. But when you watch the tape, I mean, they are coming from all angles to try to get to Arch Manning last year. Um, when you watch Gooseby tape, is there technique? Are there some things that he could do better? Um, Obviously, I think some of the thing for him is he kind of plays an in-between game. There are times where he lets his athletic talents be the only thing he stands on. And you'll see the technique break down because he thinks he can get out to somebody faster than he can. Or he doesn't engage in the way you'd expect him to do, which leads to people rushing off at him. Most of the sacks that he gave up of those three were guys that started with a bull rush and then prepared to move off of it. Went power and then speed. He looks like he's always looking for people to try to get around him. And last year, people started to attack his upper body and see what they could do. Again, especially early on in the season, this is nitpicking. He is an All-American. Like he has great tape, but if you go through it, you watch, there are definitely some weaknesses, and there's definitely things that defensive coordinators had picked up on him last year.
Yeah, that is an excellent synopsis. I didn't have all of that in my notes, but all of it fits with my notes. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody up front. I love Trevor Gooseby. As of right now, he's my favorite left tackle, favorite offensive lineman in this class. I really love him. But you're right. There are some things to point at and say, well, he could work on this, or maybe this will always not be the strongest part of his game. So it's absolutely there. Let me hit the notes, then we'll talk about him for a second. Excellent strength. I didn't see him getting pushed around too much as far as when they needed to run short yardage, run the football, he's able to do what he needs to do. Excellent athleticism. You already mentioned the athleticism. He really does have the athleticism to be able to pull, almost do just about anything you need a guy to do in college or at the NFL level. So I love the athleticism. I love the way he keeps edge rushers off of his quarterback. And by edge rushers, I mean the speed guys. Now, you mentioned it, and this is where it goes hand in glove with what I'm seeing. He so much is looking for those speed edge rushers, and I thought he just did a fantastic job keeping them at arm's length away from his quarterback. That defensive coordinator started hitting him up high, doing that power thing first and then setting up the move. And you're exactly right. So he's got to figure that out maybe this season or first year NFL. But man, I love the fact because I see so many tackles all the time who can't keep an edge rusher off of their quarterback, a real speed guy, and he can. And I absolutely love that. That's one reason I've got him up here so darn high. Now, hands and feet sometimes look out of sync. You mentioned almost exactly that. Maybe a little sloppy, sometimes reaching for things that aren't there yet. That's almost identical to what you already said. So there's room to improve here. I would love for him to just work on that technique, work on the power, work on the getting everything back in sync and staying there. That's really the only thing I think that keeps him from being dominant, but he's not quite all the way there yet. But when I see this level of talent, and again, especially that ability to keep the speed rushers off of Arch, I think that's really, really unusual talent that he's got there, and it's why I love him so much. So that's where I'm at on Trevor Gooseby. Back over to you. Where would you draft him at, and what else are you seeing with Trevor?
I think, like you said, Ben, he of the tackles, and I think this is a weaker tackle class than last year, maybe on the high end. Um, I think he right now presents himself as the winner in the clubhouse right now. There's some other guys that have similar traits that can probably make a move up. Um, but I think again, he's depending on how you think about this, he definitely has the most known quarterback and probably the quarterback that will be selected first in his backyard. So people are going to be watching him the entire year. He's going to get a chance to show what he can do. They should have a very good team again at Texas this year. So I think he's trending up right now, where there's some guys that as you get farther into the tape, I think there's going to be some more weaknesses. Um, Trevor's going to be one of those guys. I think also that at the end of the season, we kind of started this talk with the weight. I think Texas' season ends. He goes to draft combine. I think he'll put some size and weight on for that final walkthrough. Because as you mentioned, Ben, when you watch it, he's still got a little of that baby draft in him, where like he got to 6'7", he got to that weight, but his body still hasn't become accustomed to being at that. And I think another year strength program, summer workouts, everything like that is going to feed into him being a more complete player this year.
My final thought on Trevor Gooseby, we're a year away from the draft, basically. And without comparing him to other guys from other years, I already like him top 10, top five. Because teams are going to need a tackle. He's my top tackle on the board. I don't have him as the top player. I've got other players at other positions, but we've already covered so many positions. I feel fairly comfortable that in this draft, I already like him up where somewhere that good. And so we'll see if he can actually kind of clean up some of the technique stuff and some of the precision stuff as the year goes along. That's Trevor Gooseby from Texas. Next up, Jordan Seaton, left Colorado, going to LSU, height 6'5". If we thought the last guy had a bit of a weight question, this one's got more. So I'll let you speak to it in a second. It appears to me, Shane, that at Colorado he was listed as 330, and at LSU he's listed at 310. Maybe that's somebody being a little dishonest with the weights at one place. I don't know. Maybe he actually did work on his body and carving it during the off season. I'll let you speak to that. Jordan Seaton from LSU.
So I think, like you said, Ben, I have a feeling that probably the 330 may have been true last year when you look at some of the tape. But I also wouldn't be surprised that LSU told him, you didn't hold up your end of the game on what we're going to do. And the weight issue becomes an oddity for him, Ben, and what I saw. So when you talk about pass pro, I have him within my top three. He was a 2 year starter at Colorado. They threw him into an absolute waste zone of an offensive line when they were trying to rebuild to the transfer portal. Um, the thing that pops up to me most, though, when you watch this, for a guy that's as big as he supposedly is, I think his weakest thing is the run game. I for as good as his pass protection is, his run game is just as bad. Not strong at the point of attack. They ran away from him a great deal. He's had some medical issues in the past that have cut his season short. Um, he's one of the ones where, looks great coming off the bus, and you see what you can do, and you see him with that offensive line at Colorado, and you're like, man, they're just gonna pile up right behind him. They'll start this run game off. We'll be able to get things going. You watch them in the beginning, they just ran away from him, and you thought, okay, maybe that's just because there's a stronger defensive end. Teams switched their things; they still didn't run to his side. Um, the weakness for him is run game, and it's a shame because the pass pro is like I said, out of the ones we did tonight, I put him in the top three. He's not the best, but he has great athleticism, pretty good hand placement. Um, but I hope that this change, going to LSU, more offensive linemen inside the room that can work with him, uh, a coaching staff more dominant on wanting to have the run game there. But I think this is a huge year for him because if he's going off last year's tape, I think people are going to pick it apart.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm about to pick it apart. And I love Jordan Seaton. When I watched him at 24, I was like, holy cow, this guy is
Hmm.
a top 25, top 10 future draft pick just based on talent alone. I still feel that way. But when I turn on the film and I got to be honest about it, then yeah, there are things that I'm going to pick apart on him, even though I do love the talent that we're talking about here. When we got to the 25 tape and I watched him again, I don't want to say I was disappointed, but I wasn't as excited when I watched this 25 tape as I thought I would be based on what I saw back in 24. And he's kind of this young guy who's super, super talented. So I wasn't as excited, but I still love Seaton. Got a lot of notes here. Let's work through them and I'll kick it back to you. Plays high. I always look for that in tackles. I prefer the guys that don't play tall, but it does not seem to be killing him. I'll come back to that later. It's just a note that he does play high. Solid mobility. I think you mentioned that. It's not elite athleticism, but he can move around. It's sufficient. He can certainly work the second level and he can pull outside, but it's not brilliant. It's not like he's getting to these places super quick, and it's not like he has a wide range compared to some other guys that we will talk about at different times. But he does have good, solid mobility, athleticism. The anchor is good, but not elite. I didn't see him winning all the time. Didn't see him dominating all the time. You mentioned it for a guy that allegedly might have been 330 last year. The anchor is fine. It's not elite. Generally very good versus edge rush, but he
Hmm.
can be beat. The Utah game in 25, he gave up multiple pressures in the first half alone. And part of that I think was to what John Henry Daly, but that wasn't the only guy. So that wasn't great. There are times where he looks confused as to who to block.
Hmm.
Not only at first level, but when he gets to second level, there seems to be some hesitancy about which guy to go after. I saw that, both at first and second level. A lot of times, I'm going to come. The hands I have two things on. If he gets beat, a lot of times it's because guys are slapping his hands away.
Hmm.
But I'm going to come back to that in a second. Playing high does not seem to hurt him versus speed. That's one reason I still love him because when he gets to the NFL, they're going to run every speed rusher they can at him and try to get around the edge. He's got the ability, even though he plays high, to shut down a lot of that. And so that's why I still feel good about the pass protection. You mentioned him being good in the pass protection. So playing high does not seem to hurt him. Once again, against BYU, I saw him getting beat with moves, not necessarily a hand thing. I saw them, they're disciplined edge rushers usually. Saw them beating him with a couple of moves. He's kind of a rhythm player, I've noticed, a little
Hmm.
bit of hot, cold, which I don't usually see that with offensive linemen, but he seems to be that way. It's like he'll give up, a handful of pressures and a half, and then he'll just kind of get in steady stream mode and he looks really good. Um, I tell you what I saw, once he gets set up and gets his hands on a guy, it seems to be over. He seems to kind of get locked in, like if they don't catch him early with the hand slap or with the step, that he's almost impossible to beat once he gets set up, gets his hands locked on. The last thing I have on him, and this is where I wasn't as excited about him. He does not seem especially hungry to win or dominate every snap. And I kind of hated that because I didn't notice that on the 24 tape. By the time I got the 25 tape, it seemed very apparent. It was like there were plenty of snaps where he just feels like, well, I got the job done or I did just enough,
Hmm.
I'm okay. So I didn't love that. It doesn't mean I won't draft him or still love the talent. It's just something that I wasn't thrilled with. So that's my take on Jordan Seat, and I'll kick it back to you for anything else you want to talk about.
Well, I think the few things that I'll mention, Ben, kind of tie right in off of some of the points you made. Um, as you said, especially last year, and I hope this changes with the new coaching staff at LSU, there's a lot of times where it didn't look like he cared, or he sure didn't care enough. Um, Especially when you're talking about second level. He had some chances where, for a guy that's not strong in the run game, he could have picked off linebackers and gotten a pretty good shot on him. He misses,
Yep.
or he doesn't even try to get to them. You see backs get pulled down from behind because he let go of his block when he thought they were already past them.
Yep.
You mentioned with the hand swipe. I think it's deeper than that. I think part of the reason why he's not strong in the run game is that he doesn't have a very good punch. I don't think his
Okay.
hand placement is very good. And I think his strength for the weight is on the lower end. That's
Okay.
where a lot of times where you're talking about like how quickly they can get his hands away. But if he has them already engaged, he can hold them at bay. I don't think he has a strong punch. I think it's a weakness for him. It's a lot of times where you said he did okay against the speed rush, but sometimes lost them. Those guys would go fast outside, swipe the hands, and then reroute him to go back up the middle. He had
Yes.
no technique to protect himself after that. Um, yeah, I mean, this is a guy that's going to want to put this last year behind him and put good tape and have a good combine, because if he doesn't, he's going to be one of those ones, just like you said, Ben, where he'll still get drafted because the package is the package. They don't grow on trees. It's hard to find guys that do that. But I think there's going to be guys that blow by him technique wise and play level, because he's also stepping in. There's a big difference between Big 12 Colorado and SEC LSU,
Yes.
especially when it comes to defensive lines. So if he was having fits out there, he definitely didn't pick an easier spot to go. So if those technique things are still weak, I think it's going to get exposed pretty quickly at LSU.
You're making a great point. Now, again, you and we've been studying this draft for months now. I've still got a high first round grade on him because he plays left tackle and because the talent is so immense. But one of the things I'm concerned about is, he already knows just in college football, there's a huge demand for his services. That's why he's getting paid to go play at
Mm-hmm.
LSU. He knows the same effect is going to happen at the NFL level because you just mentioned the supply is very small on guys who can play this position and have the talent to do it. So, does that kind of tamp down his desire to really refine his game and be all that he can be, and I do worry about that. I hope LSU can kick him into gear on that. because you mentioned guys passing him by on the technical thing. I'll bet the next, 15 guys we talk about, maybe not the next 15, but a lot of the next 15 have already passed him technique wise. Just they have tremendous technique in some cases. In a lot of cases, because they know they need to. They don't have the
Hmm.
talent that Jordan's got. They have got to work on their game. And we see this with other positions more often, I think, but I feel like I'm getting this with Jordan here. And I would love to see him get that fire, work on the game all off season, and then show up with a little bit of extra mean streak during the games as well. I would feel a lot better about it. Right now, where do you have him on, say, the tackle list, and where would you be interested in drafting him right now?
Feel like you said in the beginning, I think he sits in the first round. After watching that tape, especially last year, with some of the medical things, I think he's a guy that's going to drop this year. Um, I think you have first round talent, but I wouldn't be surprised where if he's a guy you get him late second, early third, and people kind of go, "Wow, I can't believe he dropped as far as he did."
Yeah.
Um, I think the medical is going to be tough on him. There's some things that happen. I don't want to say like true injuries, but there's some things that everybody knew about. But I have a feeling that some of these weaknesses and some of the other things that have shown up on film, I think he's playing hurt more than he let on last year. So there might be something else that comes out when the medicals do as well, and that would hurt him.
Yeah, and listen, if that's true, and there's every chance that it is, then I'd be more willing to give him a benefit of the doubt on some of the effort slash
Hmm.
technique, but then I've got to pull him down for the medicals, so the net result is the same. Medicals will pull these guys down quicker than just about anything. If teams don't trust that this guy can be available on game day, that pulls them down sometimes several rounds. We'll see. That's Jordan Seaton, LSU. Watch him this fall. Caden Green from Missouri, 6'5", 325 is what I saw listed most often. Shane, tell us about Caden Green.
Well, Caden Green right now is falling into the Missouri is an undercover offensive line supply to the NFL right now. Caden Green fits in with the last couple of guys that have gone through Mizzou. Uh, Speed above what you think, power when he needs it. They play a very run heavy offense where
Yeah.
they like to set the tone in that game. I think based on the other guys we talked, this is one where he does set tones on run game. He is going to use his athletic power when he gets into people. Um, I think that sometimes his movement looks choppy in pass protection. I also don't know though if that's kind of been a thing that I've mentioned on the last couple of Missouri guys as well. So I don't know if that's a trained technique and it's just something I see differently than they do. Um, Thought he handled himself real well against a pretty tough lineup they faced last year. Um, for him, he's one of the ones that I think this is a year where he's going to rise up the charts because I think they'll see him play more and more. And I think some of these other guys are going to fall off. And again, like I said, Missouri brings in a back. They're going to try to get him 1,000 yards, and they're going to try to set their offense off of that. So
Yeah.
your offensive line gets the type of chance to set the tone and see what they can do. Um, like I said, not heavy on the weaknesses. The one thing he doesn't look fluid as you'd look for as a top, you know, offensive lineman and especially tackle. There's a lot of choppiness in his movements, and like I said, maybe that's a learning curve. And then as you get more years in, then that move becomes second nature to you, and it just wasn't last year. But all in all, I of the ones we watched early on, I thought he had the most balanced tape. Where there weren't times where I went, "Wow, I have no idea what he's doing," but then also times where I was like, "That's unbelievable." I thought he played the middle ground better than the last couple of ones we've talked about. Um, his weight, he looks bigger on film to me than what they have him listed at.
Totally
And
agree.
that might be
Yes.
another thing that leads to that choppiness, but I wouldn't be surprised if he weighs above what they have him marked at.
totally agree about the weight. I'll hit the weight thing real quick since you mentioned it last. There aren't, listen, all these offensive linemen are big. The defensive tackles are big. They're all big guys. I get that. When I look at him on tape, he looks ominous and scary. And I don't say that about many guys, but he just looks like a big, scary dude. And so, yeah, I agree. I think he's probably carrying more weight than this 325 is saying. Let me get in the notes here. I'll kick it back to you. Uh, I'm gonna keep this short. Big, strong, athletic. I love all that. At times, he plays violent. I love that too. Really
Hmm.
brings a violence to his game at times. There are times, though, a little sloppy, a little inconsistent. And there are times, too, where he's a little bit lax. It's not every play, it's just some plays where he looks a little bit lax. This guy's born to play the offensive line, man. I mean, you talk about a guy that was just born to do it. This guy is born to do it. I love that. He offers position flexibility. He played interior guard back in 24. They threw him
Hmm.
out to left tackle, so he can do both if you need to figure out a different place to put him. Pass block, run block, I like all of it. You mentioned that. I like all of it, but there are times it's a little sloppy and lax to me. Now,
Hmm.
part of that probably comes from the fact that he hasn't yet locked into a permanent position and mastered that. So I'm on the inconsistency part of it. I'm more than willing to contribute all of that to, hey, guard 1 year, left tackle another year, tough conference. Totally. But, when it comes to that little bit of sloppiness and laxness at times, that seems to be more his football DNA because I watched the same thing when he was playing guard in 24. A little sloppy, a little lax, and
Hmm.
again, I'm nitpicking when I say that, but it does show up in his game at both positions in both seasons. So just something to keep an eye on. For him right now, I've got an early second round grade, but I fully expect him to go in the first round. I think he's just too good, too talented, too balanced to not get there in the first round somewhere. I also feel like he plays better late in games when the pass
Hmm.
rushers are getting tired. He doesn't seem to. He started seeming to kind of dominate and push them around late in games. And that's saying a lot when you consider it's the Southeastern Conference and they have all these edge rushers and they're rotating them like the NFL does. Like, that's saying a lot, but he seemed to not get tired late in games. It seemed like it was the edge rushers who were getting tired. So I really like him. Little not happy with the sloppiness, the laxness, but I feel like that's probably just who he is, and I still want him on my team come draft time. So back to you. Where would you think about drafting him, and what else do you want to mention on him?
So I have him right around right where you did, Ben.
Yeah.
So early second. I mean, the thing for me, and you mentioned it, when he wants to, he can be downright nasty.
Yes.
Uh, and you mentioned it late in games. They took Hardy and they ran right behind him at the end of the game. They wanted him to be the one that pushed the pile. We're going to get 4 yards. We're going to get four more yards. We're going to get four more yards. Um, my concern is exactly what you mentioned, though, Ben. For that type of ferocity, for the run game when you really want it, there's times where maybe I thought that he was getting tired. But I think, and you brought it up, I think there's probably some stuff where maybe he just kind of mentally checks out every once in a while. Um, and I mean, that's nitpicking again, but you bring up the point. So when you're doing that against SEC rushers and people, they're bringing in multitude and multitude and multitude. The problem is then you go to the NFL and you have Miles Garrett who never takes a playoff. Mac Crosby's never going to take a playoff. You know, and it's your job to block those guys. So you can't mentally slip out of that because it only takes one mistake for those guys to be able to get to the quarterback, and then that changes your entire game plan. So I worry about that, just like you said, because I don't think it's a. Some people, it's just like an effort thing. I think he checks out. I don't know if it's sometimes he's got too much going on in his head, and they make it difficult for him, and maybe things can be simplified or what it is. But when he looks bad in pass protection, it looks like he forgot how strong he was in every play you watched before.
Yeah, I agree. It does feel like taking a play off or mentally checking out here and there. It's not it doesn't happen so often that it pulls me down on him, but it does happen. And you see some of these guys playing NFL football and they don't ever take a play off.
Hmm.
They're on every single play. I didn't quite see that from him, but I we'll see if he cleans that up. Maybe not. Maybe that's just who he is. Caden Green, Missouri. Let's cover. Isn't it something we're covering Indiana prospects in the NFL now? I mean, it's just it's very different now. Carter Smith, left tackle for Indiana, 6'5", weight 310 pounds. I'm gonna go hit my notes on him first, then I'll kick it over to you. So I really like the hands and feet. I thought that was a good. They work together, good synergy. I really do like both the hands and the feet. It's solid. I felt like he was solid in run blocking and pass blocking. I didn't think he necessarily stood out in the games that I watched, but I thought he was solid in both, very balanced in both. I felt like in pass protection versus Kenyatta Jackson, he struggled. I felt like that was sloppy. And again, Kenyatta Jackson's pretty darn good too, so keep an eye out for him. I thought that was a game. He didn't get dominated. It was just sloppy. I felt like he was giving up more pressures, more beats than I would have liked. When
Hmm.
you stacked him up against the Oregon Ducks, it was better, but it still wasn't great. When I went to the film versus other teams, some of the lesser Big Ten teams, I thought he looked a lot more crisp and a lot more clean. But when you ran him back up against Oregon and Ohio State and specifically Kenyatta Jackson, but again, those teams are tough as nails and they've got NFL talent on their own right. That's where I thought he started to struggle myself. The
Hmm.
athleticism is average. It's not bad, but it's average, decent athleticism. And then the strength is good, not great. So I've got a guy here based on my film that I really do like. He's solid, but I didn't see where he stood out in a lot of these categories. And again, he's playing in a tough conference, similar to the Southeastern Conference these days. Man, you're going up against a lot of good players. But that's what I've got here on Carter Smith. I'll come back with the draft grade in a second. But your thoughts on Carter Smith?
So for Carter Smith, Ben, I have him. I, he's ranked in my top one or two pass pro guys. His technique is there. Um, I think he's very good at second level movement in the run game. And I think he does a good job of making an initial punch and then getting back to retreat in pass protection. The weaknesses I saw are very similar to what you mentioned, Ben. I think he's lean. Um, he's he's one of those guys that when you see that that's what they have him listed at, you think maybe he's like 290 instead of 310.
Yeah,
Um, looks
yeah,
lean out there compared to other guys. I thought, unfortunately for him, he had his worst games when most people were watching. You
right.
mentioned the Ohio State game. He looked okay, I'll say, versus Oregon. Miami was a tough go for him. Miami with those two talented pass rushers and the speed and what they could bring didn't have a great game there. Like I said, though, his technique is his saving grace because even against the best ones, he can still hold them off long enough to get the ball loose, but his clock needs to speed up. He needs to be more prepared for some of those things that come through. Um, I think it will be hard for him to put on a lot of strength. I think that's the weaker side of his game. Um, that definitely in the pros, it's going to be Bull Rush City. Uh, but this year, I think people are going to watch for those big games, Ben. You mentioned it. The tape against the higher end talent,
Yeah.
he doesn't look as good as he does against, Purdue and Northwestern and teams that you're putting 63 up on. And you know what they're going to do because they have to rush the passer every down.
Yeah, and listen, I agree, and I didn't give him enough because you're higher on him than I did but I didn't give him enough credit for the technique because, like we both said, in a lot of these games, he is so crisp and so clean. But then when it came to the high profile games, the one everybody's watching, the Miamis and the Ohio States and the Oregons, that's where he did start to struggle. But again, when you're in those games, man, a lot of times you're left on an island by yourself. Those defenses purposely force you to have to make decisions about which guy to block. And they may run a strength guy at you one play and a speed guy off you the next play. They have all of that capability. So I'm not necessarily ragging him, but I agree with you about the technique. At the moment, I've got a second round grade on him, and it would not surprise me at all if he gets snatched up in the first round based on what else I'm seeing in this year's draft. So that's my take on Carter Smith. Where would you be looking at taking him?
So I think it also depends on what you actually see him as, Ben. So these last couple of years, it's been big in we're going to transition a tackle to a guard, we're going to transition a tackle to a center. I think Carter Smith is going to be one of those guys that people are going to want to see him take reps at center. The
Yeah.
lower weight, the technique can help him there. He can get shade and help from the inside. I wouldn't be surprised as we come along where people start to see him and want during the draft process for him to take reps at center. I think depending on his flexibility across the line, that's going to help him out. I probably have a middle second right now, Ben. Technique wise, like I said, I think he's one of the top ones, but the play power and play speed is not up to the level of what his technique is.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that we might see or be considering moving him more to the interior. And listen, I want to be clear. I like him at left tackle. I'm fine, if we're a team that needs to upgrade left tackle and we can't shoot up the boards and get one of the blue chippers, so to speak, we can get this guy and we've upgraded our left tackle spot. But also, I'm wide open to the idea that this guy may move to a center spot and be one of the best in the league at center. And I'm thrilled and happy with that too, especially if I've upgraded my center spot. So yeah, totally hear you on that. Anything else on Carter Smith here?
Like I said, Ben, I think it'll be interesting to see new quarterback coming off a national championship.
Yeah.
Indiana definitely after the last couple of years cannot not play the victim anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how this offense revolves and evolves and see how he can handle that because I think they're going to dial the pressure up a lot more this year than they did last year. Knowing that Josh Hoover, is going to throw the ball and he's going to do RPOs. So they're going to look to try to hit him more this year than I think they let for Fernando Mendoza get away with last year.
All right. That is Carter Smith, Indiana. Our last main guy for the night, I'm going to rattle off a bunch of names at the end. So stay tuned if you're just looking to get a feel for the watch list. Austin Siereveld out of Ohio State, height 6'5", weight 325. I've got quite a few notes here, but Shane, I'm gonna kick it to you first.
I mean, for him, Ben, I really feel like he is the carbon copy Ohio State offensive lineman. Uh, they all have good to great size. Um, I think Austin's athleticism is a little bit on the lower end from where I would have expected it to be. I do think he carries the weight around well. Um, I thought he played well in some of Ohio State's toughest games, which leads me to think that he's going to be a guy that's going to continue to fight regardless of where he gets selected and what he has to do. Um, I do see lapses in his game. Didn't really get enough of his tape on some of the weaker opponents. I saw him play against some pretty high end guys, so it's hard to always judge on if that's a talent level you're going against versus something that always is a problem for you.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so for me with Austin Sarabeld, I like him. I've got a second round grade on him, but it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't go higher if he has a really good year at Ohio State. So let me hit the notes and then we'll come back to where you're thinking about drafting him. First of all, I really like his strength. I mean, he loves to hit. I really think that's maybe the best part of his game to me. Like the strength, loves to hit. He will often put people on the ground. Now, he's not always dominant. I do not mean to say that because he's not, but he will often put people on the ground. You'll see them trying to spin around the edge, and he'll just kind of mash them into the ground. Does a good
Hmm.
job with that. The run blocking is very good. It's not elite, but it's very good run blocking. You can work with him, run behind him. I like that. Uh, Another thing I like is he's decisive. I've mentioned a couple of other guys tonight who seem to get confused or who seem to not be certain where to go. He seems to me to be usually very decisive about where he wants to go and has a good understanding. As a result of that, he almost always gets a block on, almost always gets a helmet on somebody. When I talked earlier about Caden Green or even Jordan Seaton, that's not always the case. They're not always getting helmets on somebody when they move around. I felt like he did an excellent job of deciding who he wanted to go after and at least getting a helmet on those people. So I like that. You mentioned it though. The athleticism and the mobility is limited. You said it was down on the low end, and that's right. Out of all the guys we're looking at tonight, he does not move around very much. He kind of has his area, and you will not see him pull too much. You won't see him second level all that often. It's not never, but as far as his ranginess or his likelihood to move around and go block people in other places, it's way less than what we're seeing from some of these other guys. So the athleticism and the mobility is limited. I felt like he struggled a lot versus speed and explosiveness,
Hmm.
especially like against Miami. They really threw a lot of that, which they've got it, but they threw a lot of that speed and just athletic burst at him. I feel like he has a slow starter, a slow first
Hmm.
step, which also hinders with that. So when I have a guy here who's got a slow first step and he's not very athletic, that does tend to lend itself to him struggling with the guys who are fast and athletic. So that right there is going to pull him down some for me. I did see him getting more help from tight ends than some of the other tackles that we've talked about. Ohio State had to help him more from the tight end spot. There's still a chance, and I've already told you about why I would take him down. There's still a chance this guy shows up late first round because of the need for tackles. But for me, I've got just a solid second round grade on him, maybe even late second round grade because slow first step, limited range. It shows up especially well, it shows up in two areas. Number one is you can't use him everywhere you would like to in the run game, the modern run game, but also it shows up when he's going up against speed rushers with a lot of burst. So that's two things that kind of limit him for me. Still love the work. Still going to get drafted fairly high here. So your thoughts on Austin Saraveld, where you would like to take him?
I think you covered it pretty top to bottom on that, Ben. The thing that I saw him, and you mentioned, he likes to bury guys. He's going to do that. He works much better in a phone booth than you making him go out. He
Yeah,
in my mind is like a bird dog. You kind of set him in the field and let him get the birds going, and then you're going to clean up. But you don't expect him to chase anything down. That's not what he's there for. He's going to make racket. He's going to move stuff around.
right.
Um, and like you said, he clamps on in the first level. If he gets to you in the second level, you're in trouble. But it's not
Yes.
smooth. It's not as athletic as you'd expect. Um, you're definitely right that they helped him throughout the year. Tight ends chipping, running backs chipping if he was on the opposite side of the power. Um, I have him lower. You do, but I think the fact that he's going to have film where he's pancaking guys and staying on top of them, you're
Yeah.
going to get a general manager and offensive line coach that says, "Hey, I can work out some of these other things, or we're not going to ask him to do that much. Again, when we're talking about transitions, if you work better in a phone booth, your strength is okay, you're not as athletic, you're probably not going to play tackle on the next level. So, a guy I think who's ripe for a position change, they would slide him into guard and would be happy with him for a couple of years down the road.
That's a great point. Again, that phone booth mentality where, hey, I drop him into guard and the bird dogging approach that you mentioned, he just hits people. I can run the football behind him. He doesn't have to worry so much about the speed, the athleticism, the explosiveness that he does struggle with. So that's a great point. That may be exactly what happens with Austin Sarabeld. He is at Ohio State. Enjoy watching him this fall. So all right, so what I'm about to do, I am going to literally run through about 17 guys. So y'all hang with me here. The whole point of this list is to give you a watch list of guys that we're looking at. In a couple of weeks, me and Shane are going to have another cluster of these guys that we're going to deep dive on and give you a feel for it. But just for tonight, here it comes, the watch list. Cade Piper from Iowa. And Shane, I'm going to let you talk about both the Iowa guys here in just a minute. I'll come back to them. Also from Iowa, they got a pretty good offensive line this year. If you didn't already know it, Trevor Locke from Iowa, Anthony Donko from Penn State. We will talk about him at some point. Brandon Baker from Texas, Cash Cleveland from Colorado to Texas Tech, Tyler Mercer from Kansas to Oklahoma State. The whole new offense kicking in there. Cohen Eccles from LSU, an odd move from LSU to Texas A&M. Don't usually see that happening, but he'll be at Texas A&M this fall. Melvin Siani, also from Texas. They've got a pretty good offensive line coming in from Wake Forest. Iapani Lalulu, center for the Oregon Ducks. Alexander Deuce for Arizona. Jacarius Peak, that's a guy to keep an eye on from a talent standpoint. We'll see if he can crack the ceiling there playing for South Carolina this year. Blake Frazier for Michigan. Braylon Moore for LSU. Aiden Banfield from North Carolina. Samson Okunlola from the University of Miami. Greg Johnson, Minnesota. Nicky Prongos, Stanford. PJ Williams, Southern Methodist. Lance Hurd going from Tennessee to Kentucky. So it's a very long watch list. We will not cover them all tonight. Shane, I'm going to kick it back to you. You take over either Iowa guy you want to first, and then we'll let you finish out the other Iowa guy.
So I think the one that sticks out is the one you mentioned first, Ben, and that'd be Cade Piper. Um, First of all, we if you follow the NFL draft, you know Iowa produces offensive linemen. Last year, they won the Joe Moore Award for the most complete offensive lineman in the NCAA. Had three guys drafted off of that into the NFL. The two guys that were starters that stuck around are both All Americans and are the top two guys that we're talking about
Hmm.
here. Um, the one that catches my eyes is Cade, All American last year. If you are an offensive line uh, guru, and a shout out goes to our friend Simon, if he's going to watch some game film on run technique, Cade Piper is the one you want to watch. Absolutely outstanding technique in his run game film. He's a guy that's 6'4", but he's 290, and I think they're lying on the 290. The guy is farm strong, former wrestler, from Nebraska. Decided he wanted to go Iowa for the run game. Like I said, the biggest thing for him is that he is light. Like I said, if he's 290, then he's 290 with completely padded up and some rocks in his pants, because I don't see that when you watch him. When you watch his strength, though, that's a heavyweight wrestler. Once he clamps onto you, you're done for. You cross his face, you're going to pay for it. He attacks people at the point of attack. He has no problem going to the second level and getting chips on defensive backs and things like that. The one thing that stood out to me kind of on the negative side is I do think that he plays high, which is kind of an oddity, because for everything else that he does and for for having to be a lower weight. Those guys normally do a better job of sitting down. And it's weird because when you watch him in the run game, like I said, it's teach tape. He is low, his hands are inside, he is making strong steps. When you watch him in the pass game, he reverts to trying to be athletic sometimes. Um, and so he can get picked on that way. Um, he's a guard as opposed to where most of the guys we've talked about tonight are tackles. So that changes. He's another guy where I'm not surprised if he, like everything we've talked about, he's also going to be somebody that they're going to ask him to take reps at center. I guarantee it, at his weight and his size, and especially at Iowa, they're going to get, hey, we've done this before. It's no problem. We just take guys from other spots, we move them around. They're well trained. They know what they're going to do. And he's going to be a guy I think that's going to move up draft boards this year because I think he's going to continue strong play. And I think people are going to see, hey, maybe he's got room to put on some extra weight. There's reasons why we can help him out. But I also think he's a guy where if you move him to center, that 290 becomes less worrisome. And all the
Right.
traits that you really liked about him become even bigger strengths when you move him inside.
Absolutely. That's Kate Piper from Iowa. We've got another guy here, Trevor Locke. Now, the weights I saw were 310. We were talking before the show, though. He may be a lot less than that, but Trevor Locke, 6'5". Tell us about Trevor.
So it's almost the exact opposite in what their play side is. So Locke's weakness is the run game, and his
Okay.
strength is the pass game. He gave up no sacks last year. Hand placement is excellent. Leverage on rush techniques is excellent. When we talked in the beginning part of Ben, before we kind of got on, and I said, I don't know about this weight, you watch him run blocking, and I worry more about him being 290 than I worry about Piper being 290. There's a difference in the way that they go at it physically. Um, and I think that's going to hurt Luck. I think he has the athleticism. People are going to see his pass technique and they're going to go, hey, I think we can play with this.
Hmm.
But I think he's going to get exposed this year because people last year were looking around at everybody else on the line. And I think now there's going to be more pressure on him in some of these situations that he didn't have to worry about in the past. And they're going to need him to be a more dominant run blocker, which is something he hasn't shown to me on film yet.
That's Trevor Locke, everybody from Iowa. I have not studied the two Iowa guys as much as I wanted to, so I'll let Shane cover them as he's easily capable of doing. Last thing, Shane, we've talked about a number of these guys, especially as you start working your way down the list, right? And it's not unusual to have a guy like Saraveld who are like, man, tough, physical, strong, struggles with this or that or the other, right? The speed, the explosion. Locke here, better at the pass blocking, Piper better at the run blocking. What you start to have to do as an offensive line coach or as the coach or as the GM, you have to make a decision. Are we willing to take this guy on knowing what his limitations are? And then once we take him on, do we move him? So there's quite a few decisions that go into it. It's fairly easy in the top 5 of the draft or top 10 to just take your guy and click him in and you're done with it. But the farther you move down the board, you do have to make decisions about these offensive linemen because they're just not going to be able to do everything to everybody's satisfaction. So just keep that in mind. Yes, there are weaknesses, limitations with all these guys if you're watching in the audience, but there's still very much guys worth taking. You just have to decide, well, if this guy doesn't pass block very well, do we have enough other pass blockers on our team to cover for it?
Mm-hmm.
Or, if this guy sucks at run blocking, do we have enough other guys, enough other mean guys on the team to cover up for the run blocking? It is something to keep an eye out for. Shane, I think you probably run into the same thing at all levels of football, right? Not just the NFL level.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing, Ben, that since we've been doing this for a couple of years now, you can go back and look. So Gray Zabel is a guy that 2 drafts ago we talked about. We're like, okay, he played at North Dakota State. They are
Yeah,
the cream of the crop in the FCS.
right.
They've competed well when they play FBS teams, but I thought that he was a guy they were going to move inside. They move him
Hmm.
inside. He starts as a rookie. He's got a Super Bowl championship. I
Yeah.
think those moves that have made lately, in years past, moving guys around like that hasn't been like a big thing. People have tried to fight against it. I think
Yeah.
it's become more and more prevalent where they draft somebody and they see the characteristics they're looking for and they try to blank out what's the bad. So how can we eliminate as much bad as possible? So if you're not fast out of your stance and you're not great as against speed rushers, we're going to move you inside because I like how you handle yourself in the phone booth. I like how you handle yourself in the run game. If you're short but you have great technique, you look inside because you're like, okay, I can cover you up, I can help people, I can do things like that. I talked about this on one of our other ones. I mentioned it when Simon and I broke down offensive linemen. Jimmy Johnson, when he was at Miami, he would only recruit people that were starters at center or a starter at left tackle. Because he said if you didn't start at either of those positions, if you were a right tackle in high school, there was no way you were going to be good enough to play for him on the offensive line.
Right.
So your left tackle was the biggest, the most athletic, and then center, he wanted smart guys. So if you couldn't play either of those two positions, then he wouldn't pick you. So there were an awful lot of guys in Miami that were playing tackle their whole time. They got to Miami, he moved them inside to guard. You know, he said he would take defensive linemen that weren't fast enough and make those guys guards because they had the physical technique and they had the animal characteristics, is what Jimmy Johnson would call it, to play that type of position. Those times are changing now. Offensive linemen have their own private coaches. If you're a 4-star offensive lineman, somebody's been watching you on film since you were in eighth grade.
Yeah.
Things like that have started to explode, and so I think there's more movement for people like that where if you're a college player, you want to say that you can play left tackle because that's where the money is. Like
Right.
you're gonna get paid more if you're a starting left tackle than if you're a center. That's been true in the NFL for a long time. But I think the options to move people around have become easier, where they wouldn't even risk it before.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because if I have a choice, I'm not going to move people. But you know what you end up with, you're sitting there in the second round of the draft. You're like, well, dang it, we need somebody. There's a guy sitting here that we love everything about him. He just happens to play the other side of the line from where we need that spot, right? So do we pass on this guy we like and go get a later round pick to plug that spot, or would we grab the guy we like and try to jam him in there on the other side of the line, or try to push him in from tackle to
Mm-hmm.
center? You start again having to make decisions. So yeah, totally
I,
agree.
I would also say, Ben, this is one thing that I've always believed, and I'd certainly want to talk to people that know more than I do about it. But I always think when you're drafting offensive linemen, this is one where you have to pay more attention to your scouts and your offensive line coach that worked the player out. Because, like, when you think wide receivers, if I just see a guy that can, like, anyone can see fast.
Right.
Can you see like maybe he's sloppy in the routes and things like that, but you can go, man, that guy's just a burner. He's faster
Hmm.
than everybody else on the field. I see it. Um, and so when you take like what the Raiders used to do, he would draft whoever the fastest wide receiver was. You guaranteed that if you had the fastest time as a wide receiver at the combine, then you're gonna end up a Raider. Like
You'd be a
that's what's
Raider.
gonna happen. Yeah, just win, baby. You're gonna run fast. Um, and so that's where you fall into that. I think the teams that have done great like that, like Philadelphia, I think they're going to have problems this year with a new offensive line coach. When they have just Stoutland,
Yeah.
you knew that if he gave that guy a thumbs up and you drafted him, you were going to get that guy was going to be a player. Um, and you need people to go out and find those type of ones because when it doesn't work out and you take a tackle early and they can't play for your team, uh, you're normally risking not only that player not being able to pull out of the slump to getting beat around, but he's the guy that's challenged with protecting your most needed asset. So you make a mistake at left tackle, and that gets, you know, any of the quarterback that gets Lamar Jackson killed, that gets,
Mm-hmm.
Josh killed. You're in a lot of trouble because you trusted that guy to do that. You paid him a lot of money to protect, and now your most valuable asset is sitting on the ground because he just couldn't put it together.
No, because you're right. That sucks. You draft or pay a guy to play left tackle, you think we've got that taken care of, and now we don't. That's a really rough way to go if you're an NFL team. So, Shane, I've enjoyed it. We are coming back in a couple of weeks to do more offensive linemen. The list probably will not expand beyond what I already showed everybody tonight, the watch list. We may add a name or two, but we're going to work more down that watch list, give you more intel on guys farther down that list than what we covered tonight. So, Shane, really enjoyed it. Everybody, thank you for watching. This is Pro Football Enterprises. Go check out the other names here on the channel. We've got a lot of draft prospects already up. We are going to get to the defensive guys, but we just haven't gotten there yet. We will get there late summer and early fall. All right. Have a great one. Goodbye.